The next reason that's given is economic. And this is probably the most often quoted reason for anti-Semitism. That Jews are hated because we wield too much power and too much wealth. This is the old anti-Semitic trope, the old stereotype of Jews being controlling and greedy. Where did this come from? So perhaps it came from the old Jewish profession of being lenders and then eventually bankers. Well, where did that come from? This goes all the way back to the first Jewish settlement in England. In the year 1066, Jews were brought over to England by William the Conqueror. And when they got to England, they were not allowed to own land. They were not allowed to enter most professions. And at the same time, Christians were not allowed to lend money on interest. So it actually worked out pretty well for a time for the Jews. Here they were denied most professions, and the one profession they can go into was a profession that Christians could not go into. And therefore, it just made sense. Jews began lending money. The problem is that throughout that time, as you can imagine, many Christians ended up in severe debt of Jews, which certainly led to some animosity. In the year 1290, King Edward had racked up huge debts, fighting wars all over, and he wanted to raise a tax, but Parliament wasn't willing to budge. So he struck a deal. And in return for an edict of expulsion, if he agreed to kick out all the Jews, Parliament was willing to raise a tax of 116,000 pounds, which was the largest tax in all of medieval Europe, I would think. And that's exactly what happened. In the year 1290, all the Jews, as we pointed out last time in part 1, all the Jews were kicked out of England and King Edward got his tax. But that's not where I think the idea of Jewish lending as a negative thing really took off. That we can thank William Shakespeare for. Now, in Shakespearean England, there were no Jews, at least no open Jews, because as we said, in 1290, they were all kicked out. But Shakespeare did know a hidden Jew named Rodrigo Lopez. Lopez was born in 1524 in Portugal, and when it was discovered that he was a Jew, he fled for his life to England. And in England, he changed his first name to Roger, and he tried to blend in. He started practicing medicine, became wildly successful, and in 1584, the Queen Elizabeth I, made him her royal physician. And that was a very prominent position that he worked towards and was very proud of, and the Queen and him had a pretty fond relationship. The Earl of Essex, on the other hand, did not like Rodrigo at all. And as his nemesis, the Earl of Essex created a false narrative stating that Lopez tried to poison the Queen. The Queen didn't want to believe this because this was her doctor after all. And she tried to delay the trial as long as she could. But then his enemies tried him for treason. Queen Elizabeth had no choice. He was tried, he was convicted, and eventually he was publicly executed. And at his execution, crowds and mobs of people were yelling in the streets, "Hang the Jew." Not Lopez, the Jew. What's interesting is if you look at the account of the trial, his Jewishness was front and center the entire time. So Shakespeare, watching all of this all happened in London at his time, he based his character Shylock on Lopez, this Jew that he knew, the Jew the lender. Now, for those who are not familiar with the play, Shylock was a Jewish lender who lends money to his Christian rival Antonio. Antonio defaults on his loan and can't pay, and Shylock demands a pound of flesh as payment. And that's really where this stereotype of the Jew that's willing to do anything for money comes from. The play was so successful at negatively depicting the Jew that it was a favorite in Nazi Germany. In fact, between the years 1933 and 1939, there were over 50 showings of this play. And kind of like when we read the Megillah story, and we read the name of Haman, we boo and we shake our groggers. The custom was that every time Shylock walked on the stage, they were encouraged to boo and to hiss and to jeer. So this definitely played a big part in spreading that message, that idea of the Jew being this money-hungry, greedy lender who is specifically a predatory lender. Now, Jews were definitely lenders. We know that for sure. But is that the source of Jewish hatred? Again, from Mark Twain, we see that trade after trade was taken away from the Jew. He was forbidden to engage in agriculture, to practice law, to practice medicine, except among Jews. He was forbidden the handicrafts. Even the seats of learning and the schools of science had to be closed against this tremendous antagonist. And the truth is, this was true here in America also. You go to New York City today, the reason why there are so many law firms that have Jewish names, and the reason why you have so many hospitals throughout the country that have Jewish names, is that for most of our time here, Jews were not given access to practice medicine in hospitals, to practice law in law firms. Jews were not taken as lawyers in these major law firms, so they had to start their own. Thankfully, they've become very successful, but it speaks to the fact that for most of our history in this country, Jews, there were quotas in universities, major universities that have huge Jewish populations today. If it was 50, 60, 70 years ago, Jews couldn't attend. They couldn't get jobs as lawyers and doctors. And the same was true through the Middle Ages. So if you have a Jew who cannot own land and cannot go to university and cannot get most jobs, what else is he going to do? Jews became moneylenders because of anti-Semitism. They really had nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. But it's not just money lending. This idea of Jewish greed and the Jews' obsession with money is an idea that still exists today, whether it's in hateful ways that we see on social media in forms of memes and really propaganda. That's exactly what it is. You look in the left corner over here. This is actually stock photo you can buy. You can go online if you want to look for some stock photo. It's the same way you purchase a stock photo of, a nice girl drinking coffee. You can buy a stock photo of the greedy, money-hungry Jew. It's also true in terms of the stereotypes from people who don't mean it in an offensive, hateful, anti-Semitic way. This stereotype and the concept that, all Jews are rich. I remember as a kid, we went on vacation to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And my father stopped to buy some firewood, and he pulls out a $20 bill and he hands it to the man. And the guy looks at the 20, he's like, I guess all Jews really are rich. And I remember being so taken aback about where did that come from? But that idea still exists. Where did that come from? We can attribute credit to the most successful propaganda campaign in all of world history, known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This was written in 1903 by Tsar Nicholas II, and this is a alleged, but obviously false and very anti-Semitic propaganda scheme that claims that Jews get together, I think it's every 100 years, and we get together to plot how to take over the world. And this book has been published in almost every single language. It's one of the most widely published books in all of history. And it's spread throughout the world, including here in America. Now, in America, we can thank Henry Ford for that. Henry Ford was one of the most well-known anti-Semites in America. And in 1918, he bought his hometown paper, the Dearborn Independent. And in that paper, he began producing articles about a year and a half after he purchased the paper, 91 articles in total, taking the ideas from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and Americanizing them, explaining how the Jews have this conspiracy to take over America and how they're slowly infiltrating every aspect of American society. And you have to keep in mind, this wasn't just some sort of local paper. This is Henry Ford we're talking about. And thanks to the Ford Motor Company, he had a huge network of employees and customers, and he was able to distribute this small local hometown paper all over the country. So when you bought a Ford, you didn't just get the car and an owner's manual, you also got included with it anti-Semitic propaganda. And he didn't stop there. He then took all those articles, he put them into a book, which he then distributed as a book, but he also distributed it with your Ford vehicle. You got a Ford car, it came with a bound copy of an American version of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's our American history for you. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, is it true? Let's face it. The very notion that you can get a group of Jews together in a room and they would agree on something is completely preposterous. But even if it was true, would it be the cause of hate? The Japanese in 1919 fought alongside the White Russians. And the White Russians introduced the Japanese to this book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The Japanese read it, and according to all accounts, they believed it completely. And the reaction was swift, and it was effective. They decided immediately that if Jews are really as rich, wealthy, and powerful as this book is claiming that they are, that's exactly the type of people they wanted in Japan. I'm not even joking. They developed what was called the Fugu Plan, which was a plan to try and get Jewish settlement in Japan, because if they're really this wealthy and this powerful, we want them on our side. We want to be doing business with these people. It's not a reason for hatred. We said that if something is truly a reason with cause and effect, if the cause is removed, the effect should disappear. For most of our history, Jews have not been wealthy and powerful. In the shtetls of Poland and Russia, from the Middle Ages all the way through the 20th century, as Jews were as poor as can be, they were still hated. When they liquidated the Warsaw Ghetto, there were no Jewish businesses to destroy. The Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto could not have been considered rich by anyone's standards, and yet the Nazis felt they had to be eliminated. Where were the powerful Jews during the Holocaust? And why couldn't they save Jewish refugees? I'm from Miami. And for those who know what this picture is on this slide, you know this is a very infamous part of Miami Beach history. This is a boat known as the St. Louis. It came to American shores carrying 937 refugees running away from Nazi Germany. And they got to U.S. shores. Can you imagine? You're running for your life away from Nazi Germany. You saw what happened with Kristallnacht. You saw all the things that were happening, and you somehow made it onto a ship. And you can see American shores so close you can touch it, you can smell it, you can feel it. And you know what the U.S. Coast Guard said? That's it. They got a telegram from the State Department that read, asylum seekers must await their turns on the waiting list and qualify for and obtain immigration visas before they may be admissible into the United States. The Coast Guard wouldn't even let them stay on the ship. Forget about letting them off the ship onto American soil. They wouldn't even let the ship stay at the dock. And you know what happened? They were sent away. They turned back to Europe, where many of these passengers ended up being gassed to death in the gas chambers. Where were the powerful Jews? If we are so powerful and we control the world, we couldn't save a couple hundred refugees fleeing for their life? And don't think that Jews didn't try. In those 2 or 3 days that that ship stayed on the American shores of Miami, Jews from all over the country tried in every way possible, and it got them nowhere. If we're so powerful, we're so wealthy, we're so well connected, why couldn't we do it? My point is that whether powerful or weak, rich or poor, Jews have been hated equally. And therefore, we cannot say that the economic reasons, the idea of Jews being wealthy and powerful, is a reason for anti-Semitism. An excuse for sure. But